Thank you for tuning in, everyone. Today I'm sitting in with John Guyant, retired CIA executive and former director of recruitment at the CIA. I will let John give his own introduction to you guys and a little bit of his background, but I will mention that he is an Indiana University Hoosiers fan, so he's pretty ecstatic this year after winning the national championship. So we'll get into that. John, please introduce yourself.
Hey, thanks so much. Really glad to be able to join the interview podcast here today. Very excited about the opportunity to share with some of the folks that would want to listen to this program that might have an interest in national security. As an intro to myself, I will start by saying how much I truly valued my career at the Central Intelligence Agency. Growing up in Indiana, I would have never expected to have had an opportunity to have such an incredible career. It actually began for me as a student at Indiana University back in the late 1980s. So I like to tell people I started back in the 1900s. Sounds like it was quite a long time ago. But I started as essentially an intern, where I would go back and forth between my college studies at Indiana University and then work a semester at the CIA, and then eventually graduated at the end of 1989 and came on board with the CIA full time then. My background, my major is in the business management area. So when I was first approached for an interview to come work for the agency, I really had no idea how they would use a business student. But that's the neat thing about the agency. We hire for dozens and dozens of occupations. So sometimes people think of what it is like to work at the CIA. We hire all kind of folks from all kind of backgrounds, disciplines, experiences. And that was the case with me, being able to come in with a business background, work through various positions, was ultimately getting into some management, program management jobs. I then really turned my attention to the people side of the organization. I had been recruiting for some time, and I truly enjoyed being able to work with people, a lot of times on campus, to come and take a look at the agency, work with college leaders, faculty members, et cetera, influencers, to get them to encourage students to come work for us. And then eventually was able to move into the leadership of our recruitment center. A truly rewarding experience. Was then heading up our CIA University, where I was able to help make sure we could develop those officers that we had hired, and then got into some other positions. Eventually was at the C-suite of the CIA, you might want to call it, and if you think in terms of private industry terms, and ended up finishing my career last year as an associate deputy director of the CIA. So a very rewarding career over time. That's kind of it in a quick nutshell.
Yeah, and that's great. And you touched on so many different points of note with in terms of recruitment. And we'll touch on the first thing here is you were talking about domains and how each domain kind of recruits for themselves. And we talked about this prior in a call. And yeah, if you could go into that, how that kind of looks in recruitment, and then how it kind of goes from the domain or the heads of sectors then over to you looking for recruits.
Absolutely. It's a very complex process to some degree. Each year, we need to take a look across the agency on what skills mix we believe we're going to need years from now. And based on that strategy work that we do, that leadership team, which is where, again, I kind of finished my career, then that leads to actual hiring requirements. And those hiring requirements go across our directorate. So very briefly, if you think about the CIA, we have a science and technology directorate. We have a directorate of digital innovation. So think not just IT, but anything that has to deal with the ability to work cyber, digital domain, et cetera. We have a administration management support area. That's what I spent my time in. That's all the things that it takes to run the organization. Everything from facilities, security, HR, logistics, et cetera. We also have the analytical arm of the agency. Those are the ones that are putting the products together for our policymakers. think of them as kind of the professors, college academics who really have incredible research skills to be able to put together valuable products for policymakers. And then, of course, there's the directorate I think most people think of with the CIA, our operations directorate. And those are the ones who are out in other countries recruiting foreign nationals to spy on their government on behalf of the United States. And that's some of our most critical and even dangerous work that we ask our officers to do. So I spread the table across those directorates to then follow up on where you were going is each of those directorates then have multiple disciplines. Types of officers they need to fulfill their role. You may need somebody who's a cyber security expert. You may need somebody who's an analyst that understands a particular region of the world. You may need an operations officer who has a particular language or has had experience working in some type of a business sector. I could go on, but the point is each of those directorates then have hiring managers that then go through the business of reviewing resumes that come in, setting up interviews with applicants, and then making a decision if we want to make them an offer. And it's a very complex program because we have so many applicants that are interested in coming to work for us across, again, dozens and dozens of different occupations.
Yeah, it's incredible how complex it is and yet how organized it is as well. You understand that you're looking for the future, but you're also looking for what needs are there for the future. It's not just a mass call, although you guys also do that. You have your feelers out, and you were talking about how you guys go into colleges and universities, and you try and find ways to basically recruit without actually having to be on campus. If you go into that.
Sure. So we do hire in a lot of different ways. We hire people at the mid-career level through traditional platforms, but a lot of our, bread and butter recruiting does take place for college students. I love to be able to bring in students as interns because that gives them a chance to gain some familiarity and experience with us, and it gives us a chance to know how good of a fit they're going to be. We also, of course, go after those who are graduating and those who are in master's programs and doctorate programs. So when I say college, it's the full span. Undergraduates that are still in school, all the way through those getting their doctorates. And so what a lot of times we'll do is we'll work with offices on campus, the administrative offices, to let them know we'd like to be there for your job fairs. Or maybe we would like to set up a special session in a particular part of the academic disciplines that they have there because we think there's a really good fit with their students. And we may want to set up something specific with them. We also can do remote. We'll be able to set up such as this, a Zoom call with applicants, phone calls. It really kind of depends on where they're at, what we're hiring for, but we do it in a lot of different ways. But reaching out to those that are in college or recently completing college is a very important part of our recruitment process.
Yeah, and that's really important to our follower base. It's a lot of young professionals and college students, people who are trying to find their way in national security and intelligence. And yeah, I was wondering if you could kind of walk through how it would look like recruitment on campus, how you guys would select students, meet with students, and how that process would all unfurl.
So there's a couple ways. When we're out there really presenting ourselves, working with, again, academic advisors, maybe faculty members, deans, etc., we sometimes will be out there making people aware of the type of positions we offer. And so sometimes then it's more of a, you could almost say, marketing approach that then students may apply. And then when they apply and they say where they heard about us, then we'll follow up with them like that. Another approach, though, is actually doing hiring at that time. So what we like to do is be able to get a method for students to express an interest. Sometimes, depending on the college and depending on the part of the organization that's doing the hiring, we might actually ask for resumes in advance, even applications in advance. And then based on what we receive, we'll set up interviews with those students that we think have a potential to be a good fit. And we don't just do the interview. We want to make sure that those who are interested in working for us understand several things. What it takes to come to work for us, and that can be everything from the knowledge, the skills, the abilities, experiences that they bring, as well as our security requirements. So there's a lot of misunderstanding out there about, well, if I did this, that means I can't work for the CIA, or they only want people that have had these experiences or what have you. And we can talk through that with the students. So a lot of times we'll have an information session on campus to be able to share overall information as well as be able to take questions. And then we'll even try to have some set aside time where we might have somebody, let's say from HR or from security, and be able to talk with an individual. And then they can ask more personal questions that say, hey, what do you think about this or what have you? And we might say, oh, yeah, definitely. Let's go on with the interview. We want you to apply. Or it might be, no, you know what? You may need a little bit more time. You might need some more experience. You've had a couple things in life. Let's go ahead and get that behind you. But the point is, we don't want to leave students guessing on how they should do things, what information they need to know, because it can be a little bit daunting, frankly, and we want to try to demystify and help as much as we can.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. You don't want to be too intimidating or off-putting to the sense where it's like, oh, I don't know if we should, if a student questions whether they should apply, but you want to make sure that those who applied, who will eventually hopefully be successful, are properly vetted. They're properly like, there's an understanding that oh, they will be a good fit for the role.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And on top of that, is there anything that, like, obviously there's so much brand attraction from the CIA in terms of national intelligence. And I'm sure you guys receive hundreds or thousands of applicants just through your thousands of applicants through your website. I don't even know why I said hundreds. It's probably thousands a month on just your website alone. And so I was wondering if there's a way that you guys vet those or if it's a similar process.
Yeah, thanks for asking that. It's really important. Everybody that applies to us does need to go through the CIA.gov careers page. So we might be on other platforms for bringing attention to CIA positions, but ultimately you've got to come through our portal. And when you come through our portal, you'll be able to apply for up to 4 different jobs with us. You'll be able to look at all the jobs we have. You'll be able to see a brief description on every job we have, and you'll see what the basic requirements are for each of the positions. I think that's going to be very helpful for those following us here that might have an interest. That's a very good starting point. And then once you do submit your interest, then what we do is we, like a lot of places, we'll do essentially a filtering, matching, and scoring for what somebody submits. You know, we do get a variety of people that apply, and it is quite literally thousands and thousands every month, and sometimes even tens of thousands in a month, depending on what might be happening in the world. And we get some folks who maybe aren't serious applicants, but most really are. And so it takes a lot to be able to filter through all of those and try to find the best of the best. So of those that are applying, they're going to have great records, they're going to have good experience, good academics, etc. And so we have to be very diligent in how we filter down, because we're only going to hire so many people. When you get tens of thousands of applications and you're only hiring some very small percentage of that, obviously it's going to be a competitive process. And so we do use some internal tools to help us do that filtering. We also take referrals. So if somebody is knowing that they know somebody that works for the agency, internally that employee can say, hey, I know this person, I'd like to make a referral. That can sometimes help at least make sure we get a chance to take a look at their resume package. Once they've submitted their interest and we follow up with them, then we give next steps. Then it's really the application process. They provide more information, and then we might have a couple other, maybe a phone call, a test, or what have you, and then we would schedule them for an interview. And then once they've been scheduled for an interview, further steps take place. The first one being, do we want to offer a position? And one of the things I think it's worth sharing is in a fluid environment. It may be that 1 month we have a need for certain positions, but then just a month later, a couple months later, we don't. So unfortunately, and this is one of the most frustrating things for me, is I talk with people that are interested in working for us. I'm mentoring them. I'm trying to help them. And then the requirement isn't there, maybe sometime later. And so they may get either a rejection or they might not hear anything back. And that's just really because of the vast volume we have. So what I would suggest that those following us would consider is, one, recognizing it's a competitive process to begin with. Two, when you are applying, be as relevant to what you see in those descriptions as you can be. Because if we're doing filtering and matching and scoring, you don't want to be abstract. You want to really be to point on what it is that you bring to the job and where you've had impact before. And then also recognize that you may need to have some patience with the process. Maybe you don't get through your first time. You may need to apply again. I also recommend that people don't filter themselves out. They may have certain situations in their life, experiences, or they may just feel like they might not be able to cut it. Let us decide. Don't short yourself too early. If you think you have something to offer, go ahead and enter the process, and then let us do our process on our end.
Yeah, I love hearing that. Don't filter yourself out. That's something that I feel a lot of students sometimes do. And it's something that happens with all applications. It doesn't matter if it's for scholarships or jobs or schools. You have this idea that, oh, I don't know if I'm good enough. And it's important that students know that just apply, like put your best foot forward. And even if it's not your best at the time, or maybe that's not the best way of phrasing it, but if it's not good enough at the time, you can always improve and you can always reapply. And there's the potential of future opportunities opening up in that sector.
I think that's so important. And this is something I try to give advice to those that are interested is there's other agencies that might have a better fit for you at the time. Doesn't mean you're not good. It just may mean you're not the fit for one of our positions at the moment. Again, maybe the requirements have been filled. The intelligence community has agencies that are hiring for different needs. There's also the contractor community. There's the academic community. And as you build those experiences and have greater impact, then maybe that's when you'll be able to come back to us and be an even stronger candidate. There's only so many things that are going to be absolute red flags. So it may sound obvious, but if your experience has been working with foreign governments, that may, at the very least, complicate things. If your experience has been working for foreign governments that have a tie to that foreign government's intelligence services, that's really going to be a challenge. If you've been involved in illegal activities, that's gonna certainly be a red flag. But I think the followers here on this program and that work with the network, they're going to be savvy enough to know those aren't going to work. Otherwise, no. If you've had experiences that have an applicability with us, absolutely take a look. I will say that as you're applying, really focus on more than just simply, I worked in this domain. Be looking at where you had impact. What is it that you did that resulted in something that made a difference for the organization you work for? If it was a volunteer organization, that can be valuable. A nonprofit. These are things that sometimes people don't realize can be valuable experience. We're looking at what you did, how you did it, and what impact you had. I'll start with saying from a baseline, and again, may sound obvious, but it's critical. We have to have those that are applying to have the utmost integrity. You have to have shown that you're honest, that you're diligent, and et cetera. I won't belabor it, but that's your foundation. Then the things that can put you ahead. Every place in the agency right now is needing digital acumen. Now, you don't have to be an expert in AI, but you need to be conversant in where we are moving with technology as a society, where the world is moving. Being conversant, having some level of experience in the digital environment is going to really help a candidate be very competitive with us. Foreign languages is an interesting one. It is not that somebody needs to absolutely have a particular foreign language. Some of them are going to be certainly very valuable. The hard languages, just global events, doesn't take much to understand which languages would be very valuable for us in today's world. Those are important. So if students or others have those language skills, that is going to be valuable. But even some of the non what we might call hard or critical languages can be valuable because it can show the aptitude of someone with a foreign language. And oh, by the way, just because you have one language doesn't mean that's necessarily where you'll be assigned. We train officers in a foreign language that's needed for where it is that they're going to be deployed. So a lot of times people may not think about French being a really important language, but look at how much of the African continent has a requirement to be fluent or near fluent sometimes in French. We're going to be able to help train you in that. But having an existing language can show us that you have that aptitude, that capacity. So language can be very beneficial, but folks shouldn't feel like they have to be locked into one of the really critical languages, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's awesome. I will ask you if there's any final comments you have, anything you want to say to potential applicants, or anything you want to share from your time in recruitment, anything that would maybe be of interest. Final thoughts, basically.
Certainly, certainly. Networking is always going to be important. It's not a magic bullet. Sometimes people think because they've connected with somebody, that's going to be their end. But the purpose of networking is to learn from others. So certainly have a good, strong network of people to better understand what will make you competitive. I will reemphasize what I believe is important. Consider entering in an internship type of role. And that means as you're a freshman or sophomore, if you're an undergraduate, or as you're entering a master's program, look at both our undergraduate and our graduate level internships. Those can often be that way to get into the organization. So certainly do that. And then just simply, again, understand that there's such a broad array of opportunities. Look at that broad array. Don't narrow yourself in. And certainly, if someone would like to reach out to me, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm glad to be able to share further advice if it can be helpful.
Amazing. Thank you so much, John. It was a pleasure having you on, and yeah, I'm excited to see the impact that this has with our followers.
Excellent. So glad to be here. It's important, and these followers are going to be the future of being able to provide the national security needs that we require. And I'm excited for the future.